Okay, everybody, welcome to our class tonight of PA 511, Public Policy Analysis. I thank everybody for your cooperation, and I promise to honor that cooperation by keeping this class to about 55 minutes tonight. So we'll be going through a lot of material, and I look forward to discussion of these, and hope everything turns out well. So let's go ahead and talk about the overview for tonight's class. We're not going to do the group discussion because we're limited with time. That was something that I had put in there originally, but taking that out. So the main things we're going to be doing is talking about chapters 1 and 2 of Wildavsky. Chapter 1 is titled Policy Analysis is What Information Systems Are Not. And this is a nice little introduction into what policy analysis really means. And in chapter 2 kind of looks at one important element in the work of policy analysis with respect to retreating on objectives and learning from failure in American public policy. So we'll be covering both of those chapters tonight. We may have just a couple minutes follow-up discussion, and we'll talk a little bit more about next week's assignment. Are there any questions from anybody at this point? Okay. Give me just 1 second. I need to do one thing real quick. So let's go ahead and get started with chapter 1 being what with our discussion that Wildavsky starts off with, that policy analysis, what information systems are not. And what's important to understand is that, of course, Wildavsky was writing this in the 70s. And it's important to kind of understand the environment in which he came into studying this field and was providing comment and guidance. Because oftentimes when we think of information systems, we think of them from the perspective of technology. We think of them from a computer perspective. But before computers came along, there was just the concept of an information system in a more natural or physical space. Most of you are probably of the age that you do not have had to have any experiences with card catalogs or vertical files or any of the other things, or microfiche or microfilm or any of the wonderful media and research aids that we had when I was going through high school. And also a little bit of college. And y'all haven't had to deal with that because virtually everything is on the computer. And so there are probably some of you who had a little bit, but that's going to be about it. Most of us have been working with other kinds of technology, and that's how things have gone. I never dealt with if you've ever gone and seen the original phonographs, that they are discs, they are like cylinder recordings. The original vinyl type recordings were made on cylinders. So back in the late 1800s. So, we don't have those anymore. I mean, records have come back, but there was a period of time from the 80s until the 2010s when nobody was printing anything on vinyl. But we kind of have this idea, and really what an information system is that it's basically a way in which to process information. And as I kind of talked about last week with respect to history, you have this kind of situation, you have this reality that began to come about in the 20th century in government, and of course, mainly in the United States, but also all across the world, particularly in the industrialized world, that there was a need to examine and evaluate and figure out what to do. How do you make stuff happen? How do you figure out what to do? And so initially, the idea was simply to gather information and then build a system for the processing of it to determine potentially what would make the most sense. And that has some advantages to it and some disadvantages to it. And in reality, in order to really figure out what we're needing to do, it's not adequate. So to get into that, we kind of have some comparative terminology, looking first at the perspective of resources versus objectives. And Wildavsky talks about it. Does anybody want to share kind of what their thoughts are in terms of how Wildavsky tries to compare when he's looking at this difference that exists between resources and objectives? Yes, Namin.
I remember he talked about sometimes like manager tended to put a lot of objectives in order to, like, if they, for example, put like 10 objectives and they succeeded to accomplish like 5 of them, that will be great. And instead of like putting 3 objectives and like doing none of them or only one of them. So like, and also they put objectives that there is no resources to match these objectives. So I remember he talked about this.
It gets down to, as you put it, just, how much can we actually do? And one of the challenges a lot of times with the public sector is, and this is as true at the local level as it can be true at the national level or the international level, is that a lot of times we find ourselves in a situation recognizing that there are many different things we're trying to do, but the reality is we do not have the resources to be able to accomplish all the objectives that we set out to do. One of the things that's very common in municipal government, particularly in the council manager form of government, where you have a full-time executive that's hired by city council or county commission, and that's the most common form of local government you have in North Carolina and in many parts of the United States. The city council, in its kind of being more of an advisory or vision or mission set responsibility, creates strategic plans. They get together and they formulate a strategic plan. They bring in public comment and they say, how do we put together a plan? And in that strategic plan, you identify goals and objectives, and they can be, in the initial phases of their development, they can be very voluminous. And the reality is, at some point, you actually have to sit down with council and say, you really need to prioritize this because there's only going to be so much money and so many people. And honestly, I would say right now, our biggest challenge is more people than money. It's kind of unusual, but right now it's people more than money is our biggest challenge in order to be able to accomplish the objectives that you set out to achieve. Then we kind of go into another realm, from problem solving to problem succession. And this gets kind of to that discussion that I had a little bit of last week, and that is the difference between incrementalism and transformative change. We have lived in a time in more recent years that there's been this desire for transformative change here in the United States and then also in other parts of the world, and kind of a ignoring of incrementalism. Because people find it as too slow, they find it as too old-fashioned, and also because what they see in the modern world outside of the public sector, particularly in the world of technology and in industry, has been transformative, especially in the last 20, 30 years. And so you're finding yourself in a transformative environment, you would want to solve something. You're like, we want to fix it and solve it. But the reality when it comes to policy, as Wildavsky talks about, is that really what you're dealing with is an environment where the most effective policies are going to be those that achieve that kind of go incremental in solving a problem, in which case solving one problem leads to the identification of another problem or more problems. But it's with the understanding that that's going to happen. And that, of course, can be very challenging, and it's hard. It's very hard to really advocate for that from a political perspective. I would say that's especially a challenge in many areas of trying to communicate politically that problems are going to be solved in steps rather than completely, and that you're not going to be able to just totally put together the game plan to get from point A to the end point of solving the problem. Then we have to look at the tendencies of citizens. and we talk in a little bit about resource allocation, but it's versus behavior. What does Vildovsky mean by this? And I'd like for somebody else to go. What does Vildovsky mean with respect to resource allocation as compared to behavior?
I remember him talking about how, like, we can't really plan on citizens changing their behavior, but we can plan on how we budget. So, like, we put more, resources into social services, and that's been a measurable outcome in a sense, that we have more resources in social services, but we can't necessarily change the behavior of citizens. Is he frozen?
I think, yes, building on that, it was like when programs were put in place that relied on just behavior change, they didn't work. But when they relied on reallocation of resources, it worked better.
I thought there was just a long, awkward pause.
Oh no!
Chris, you're the host now.
Yeah, I got this. Let me just go pull up his PowerPoint. I will walk you guys through it.
Oh, sorry. Did I talk or not?
No, we got you fine. He's just taking a brief vacation, I think.
Excellent.
Oh,
There we go.
here he comes.
Lindsay, I
Gotta
think he
love
was just so offended by your point, he just had to leave.
Way to go, Lindsay.
You're muted. Oh, he's talking.
You're muted.
Still on mute, Professor.
Now can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
You're good.
Yeah.
So let me explain what happened. And I apologize, and Lindsay, you're gonna have to go again. Because I'm gonna assume you so we had an email that we received at about 3:30 this afternoon. Okay, is everybody good? Can everybody hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Your
So
connection.
we got an email at 3:30 this afternoon that they were going to be testing our backup generator at 5:30. They were supposed to be testing it at 5:30. They just tested it. So to test it, they cut the power off, which meant the internet went down. So that's what happened. So I can send out the email, but I apologize for that.
Such a struggle.
Generator part 2. Can anybody else not see it?
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
It just says he has started sharing screen.
He's
It looks
getting there.
frozen. Yep.
Unfortunate.
Is this what it was like going to school during the pandemic?
Yes.
Yep.
All the time.
Dang. Well, I'm glad I missed out on that one.
Yeah, seriously.
Christopher. Oh.
Okay, I don't know what's going on, and Zoom is acting up now. So I am going to just do everything next week. That this is not fair to y'all. I will email out the assignment for I believe that there's an assignment that I need to send out to everybody, and I will do that tomorrow morning. It'll be based purely off reading for chapters 1 through 4, 1 through 2 that was due tonight, 3 for 4, which is due for next week. I believe it's the discussion that based on the syllabus. I think it's discussion. I we are, this is not, I do apologize. Y'all have prepared and it's wrong of me, but I don't know what's going on. So before this thing craps out again, I'm going to go ahead and shut down for tonight. So everybody, I appreciate you being here. I'm terribly sorry for what happened, and I will see you guys next week. And we'll be doing it from I think we're doing Zoom again next week, and it'll be from my house or from somewhere where I can guarantee that we're not going to have power or internet issues. So thank you all very much and have a good evening. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye.